So thanks for calling into the office hours. As I said in the email, there's no set agenda today, but I wanted to just give you a heads up on a couple surveys that are going to be coming out. The first one is about the user meeting. We're hoping to do a virtual user meeting this year. So we'll be sending a survey out to the mailing list, or I think maybe it already did go out, to try and determine what time works best for people and what kind of topics they want to cover and who has something they want to present. So appreciate any responses we get to that so that we can help pick a time that everybody can make. And with the the virtual version of it this year, hopefully we can make it easy for people to attend. So any questions on that? Okay. The other survey that will be coming out is a security survey about specifics of VOLTTRON deployments that was presented the last office hours meeting. Chance talked about that. The goal with that, again, is to understand how VOLTTRON's being used in the real world outside the lab and get an understanding of what specific security needs might be required there. And so again, look forward to getting feedback from that. I might be poking a few of you for some guinea pigs just to give feedback on the initial question set. Let's see, another item, the 8.0 release had some issues on initial release, so we pulled it back, and those are being worked before we do the full release and announce it and move it over to master. So thank you for everyone who has been helping us with that and filing issues.
Main.
What's that?
Main.
Oh, yes, thank you. Thank you. Yes, main. And also, as a note, part of the 8 release is the renaming of the driver framework from master driver to platform driver. So thank you, Andrew, for the reminder about the branch. Let's see, I think those were the main items I wanted to bring up. Are there any questions or anything else that people in the audience wanted to bring up today? Shweta, did you have something?
Maybe I can go over the release notes
Sure.
of the upcoming release, and also talk a little bit about the tutorial series that we are developing.
Okay.
May I share my screen?
I don't see anything yet. There we go.
Yeah, 10 days ago we did a 8.0 release and found a major bug in the release. Thank you, Andrew, for pointing that out. It broke the platform. There was an issue with the RMQ object being instantiated without having a check as to which message bus the platform was running on. And our test should have caught that, but unfortunately it didn't. So we had to pull back the release and make sure that we are confident of all the tests that we have, and make sure they are running locally at least and have a confident release. So we are it's taking up a little more time than expected, but hopefully the next release we know that the tests that we have work properly and the source code is good. So the release contains, the upcoming release will contain a video tutorial, and this is a tutorial series that we are constantly working on. The first one in the series is out there. It's embedded into the read the docs, and the link is provided here, and it should already be in the develop version of Read the Docs. So, sorry. So this tutorial was done by Chandrika, and she did a very good job of that. Please, if you want to get an understanding of historian and various flavors of historian, this is a very good tutorial. Please look at that and give us feedback. This is just the first one in a series of tutorials that we are developing. The next one will be the introduction of VOLTTRON. It is still under development. There's going to be one on VOLTTRON Central, one on RabbitMQ based deployment, and so on. And if you guys want any specific topic to be covered, please let us know, and we will add that to the list and make it a priority. But the first one is out there. Please take a listen and let us know if it's useful. Like Jeremy mentioned before, the name of the master driver agent is changed to platform driver. Similarly, master web service is changed to platform web service. All the related documentation has been updated according to that. For remote RMQ and RabbitMQ based connections, we had introduced a web-based authentication mechanism. We have just backported that to command line support as well, and that support is provided both for 0MQ and RabbitMQ. The CSR operation support for multi-platform federation has been added. This CSR support is required for remote authenticated connections for RabbitMQ. Earlier, the support was available for remote forwarder agents and any type of agent-specific connection. We have extended that to Shovel and Federation as well. Now we have introduced GitHub workflows to run automated VOLTTRON tests on GitHub. So every PR pull request that you put out there, these tests get kicked off. And we are in the process of making sure that we have a concrete and reliable test result every time there is a pull request. We have made significant improvements to the test framework, especially in platform wrapper. Craig has done a wonderful job there, but there's still some improvements that we have found needs to be done, and we're going to do that before the next release. Then installation of agents. Earlier we had install agent script. Now it's you can still use the script, but you can also use VOLTTRON control command. It's integrated into the VOLTTRON control utility. So you can use VOLTTRON control install command to install agents. All agents have default send heartbeat messages by default now, but you can opt out of that by setting the default configuration. Added more documentation updates
Hold on, I wanted to say something about that. So if you opt out of the heartbeat message, then the status, when you do a VCTL status, will not change, because the heartbeat is what is used for that status now, and that allows a much more scalable platform when you're doing a status with a large number of agents. So anyways, I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. The next point was about making further updates to read the docs. Hopefully that is useful for you, for all of you to follow VOLTTRON. And the next one was related to as it was a consequence of the Secure Software Central report that was created for RabbitMQ deployment case. There were a few suggestions that the Secure Software team provided in that report. We have introduced a secure deployment guidance section in Read the Docs. It's available in Read the Docs, and it covers things like, run web server behind a proxy, how to monitor for data tampering, how do you limit publishing on devices topic to platform driver. You can add write protection field in auth and in protected topics JSON, and that will limit only platform driver to publish the devices, publish messages on the device topic. Limit access to RPC methods using capabilities. Only the said agent will be allowed to make RPC calls on a specific agent. If that capability can be introduced, and you can add additional restrictions to your deployed agents. Then monitoring RabbitMQ server also can be introduced in your deployment. You can run it as a service and allow systemd to monitor RabbitMQ whenever it crashes and allow it to restart. What we have tested is whenever RabbitMQ broker goes down, the agent should be able to recognize that and attempt to reconnect when the Rabbit broker comes back in. So from the VOLTTRON platform software perspective and the agent's perspective, it can detect when the broker goes down and reconnect on when the broker comes back. You can use systemd service to monitor RabbitMQ if it is made to run as a service. So how to do that is explained here. We have added a VOLTTRON development Docker environment. The link provided here is still a private repo. We are going to make it public after we know that all the things out there will not cause any issue. So we will do that shortly. Minor bug fixes to VCTL and VCFG. We were still maintaining some backward compatibility for PubSub subsystem with VOLTTRON 4.1. We are in VOLTTRON 8 version, so it made sense to remove that now. This added capability to monitor and restart Rabbit from health service has been removed for now. We will test it thoroughly. There is some, it's flaky, it's finicky in some systems, in some environments, so this has to be tested. So we have removed this from the current release. So this is related to the web page. So when you're trying to authenticate remote connections. When an agent or a federation or a shovel is attempting to connect to another instance, you can approve, deny, or delete such a request through the web page. The approval, denial, and deletion process goes through fine, but there is a SSL handshake error observed in the logs. Just needed to make sure that this is because of the self-signed certificate that we have introduced, and the browser has an issue with that. So it looks like it's not a big issue, but we will look at it again and make sure that that is the case. So just added it in the known issues list. RabbitMQ still doesn't work on Ubuntu 20.04. This is because we still use G events, and the latest RabbitMQ has moved to a different adapter that uses an asynchronous adapter. So we'll have to make changes in the platform to start to make it friendly, make G events and async work cooperatively together. So this is still an action item on our end, and when that is resolved, I believe we can make Pika, the latest Pika and latest Rabbit work properly on Ubuntu 20.04. There's still a compatibility issue with 6 to 7 and forwarding data from 6 instance to 7 instance. I don't know how many of you are still using 6 and 7, but this issue is known and we are looking into it. Yeah, that's all I had about the release and the tutorial series that we are developing.
Thanks. So yeah, let us know if you have any priorities on the tutorial series. That would help us figure out which ones to, or what order to do things in. Or if you have any use cases that you'd like to see walked through, that would be helpful too. All right. Any questions or comments from anybody else? Craig, did you want to float the repo restructure that we've been talking about? I can't remember if you brought it up at the office hours already or not. You there, Craig? Oh, there we go.
Yeah. So float the restructure. So basically, what the biggest things that I think that we should do is to get all of the different agents and examples and stuff out of the main repo and put them in their own repository. Maybe there's still an examples repository that has multiple agents and one, but each individual, like each of the historians would be in its own repo, or maybe there's just a single historian that has the adapters to the different databases, and that would get the base agent historian out of the main repository, and we would simplify the VOLTTRON namespace so that it's in there would be two main entry points into the system. One that would be for the agent class itself, which would have the subsystems, et cetera, in it. And then there would be a server module that would be dependent upon that agent class. But that would be where the server namespaces would be. The transition for this will probably mean that we would have first thing would be to move the agents out of the repo, and then we'll probably change the method of install. We'll probably use Poetry. At least that's the current thought, is to use Poetry as our builder, and we'll separate into a client and a server folder structure, and then from there we'll go in and further into their own separate repos, all hopefully up on Pippy, so that we can utilize that resource as a point of installation, rather than having to clone the repo or download the repo. One of the issues that we're going to have to solve is how to do something similar to NPM or one of the other tools such as Cargo, to get the different VOLTTRON packages and how those can be registered registered and searched for from the platform. That's one of the things that we need to be thinking about as we extend and allow this to happen. That's going to be something that you won't get everything all at the same time any longer, which should be of benefit, but there's also cost associated with that. So that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, and if
That's my initial thoughts as we're going through this anyways. And so.
Yeah, and if anybody has any thoughts on that, please let us know. But yeah, the goal is to make it so that you don't have to pull down everything if all you need is the base platform and a few select agents.
I guess I'm a little confused what if you're just using Pippy, what else do you need?
The VOLTTRON packages, the wheels are not necessarily Pippy compliant wheels. So that's and if we do, maybe that's one of the things that we do, is we make sure that our wheels are Pippy compliant, so that we can just install those just like normal packages.
Yeah.
But right now they aren't, because just that's what we used when we started. So that's the only reason that would keep us from doing direct Pippy. But there still should be some sort of category for the different things that are quote unquote VOLTTRON approved or whatever. And maybe that's didn't answer your question based upon your face.
Well, I'm just concerned that I'm hearing you talking about building a package registry for VOLTTRON, which sounds like a lot of work with almost
It does
no value.
Like I said,
if you can use
that's
Pippy,
a thought. Yeah, for sure.
Because package management is really hard, and
yes, it is.
The likelihood that you're the VOLTTRON team is going to do a better job than the Pippy team is very low.
Well, I'm thinking about a registry, meaning these are all things that, well, for instance, how would you recommend finding packages? I mean, you set out a community thing, right? Is it that it would be specific VOLTTRON? Would there be a something that has VOLTTRON in it that you would search for? How would you find it, I guess, is my question. I mean, I can think of several different ways.
How do you find a Python library now? Do you browse Pippy?
Sometimes. Just depends what it is.
Okay.
But
I don't know anybody that browses Pippy. Normally you search
it,
you find it on GitHub, and then in the README it's pip install X.
No, I get that.
That is is certainly better than what we have now, and it is unlikely that you'll be able to build something more optimal than that. I say that because
Totally agree.
yeah. So I mean I love the idea of being able to pip install SQL
The only
Historian,
thing that
VOLTTRON
the
-SQL
only thing I
Historian.
don't know that we're going to be able to do pip install because of the way the agent structure works and how our agents are not installed in the environment itself.
Site packages,
So
right?
yeah, right, not in the site packages. So that's the concern I have.
Actually, what you can do with that,
I would
like,
just do a wrapper around it, but
well, one thing you could do is drop, like, you could use pip to copy them into site packages, and then, but you could have a wrap, like VCTL could wrap pip,
yeah,
and you could do
that's what I'm saying.
VCTL
Yeah,
install a pip package, and it copies it to
yep,
the site packages, and then it also packages it and builds it as an agent.
yep, yep, that's a possibility as well. So, like I said, those are things that are on the thought, anyways. So, but I totally agree. I don't want to rebuild a package. I don't want to build a package manager. No, that's so outside of the scope.
Yeah, the other thing I had a kind of comment on was related to the restructuring of the repo. Like for the things that rely on current platform code, I would recommend not moving those outside of the current repo until you have the platform dependencies broken.
Exactly. No, I totally agree.
I
That
wasn't sure if that's
yeah,
what you
yeah,
said. I
yeah.
couldn't tell
That's
what you
what I
said.
said. Yeah,
Okay, good.
yeah,
All
that's
right.
what I said. Yeah, yeah. I totally agree. We don't want to break things that are out there right now until there's a path forward from there to the new stuff. Yeah. No, I agree with that.
Okay. Yeah, and so we'll keep bringing this up as we think about it because there's major implications for how people use the platform and how it affects existing platforms. So we want to make sure we get get feedback on that. So thanks.
And as this goes, it will be in a non-developed branch probably as we go. So this won't affect if you're using the developed branch until down the line somewhere.
I mean, if the goal is to make it simpler and achieve like easier accessibility for a broader community, like I'm curious, and maybe this user survey may capture some of this, but like, are people running this on non-Debian operating systems? Like how many like CentOS isn't even around anymore. So how many Red Hat VOLTTRONs are there out there? And does it just make sense to like build a VOLTTRON PPA?
We've thought about Snap, doing a Snap.
Or Snap.
That's one of the thought processes that we've had. There are people using it on Red Hat systems that I know about. There's several GSA deployments that are using it, and others as well. But yeah, there is.
Yeah, but like how many? Because you don't have to you don't have to solve the problem for everyone as long as they can still run it the way they're running it now. Like that's fine. Sure. The question is like, where are the people who would adopt it if it was easier?
Right.
And the chances are they're like running Raspbian or they're running Ubuntu, whatever the latest LTS is. Like that's like 90%, I would think, of the people who are like, that install looks really complicated. I don't want to do that.
Yeah, no, that's fair. It's easy if you do this, but you can still do it however you want if you don't want to do it that way.
Because like pleasing everyone is how you build something that no one wants to use.
Right.
Sure.
Okay.
But wasn't the Eclipse, moving to Eclipse was what drove us towards this direction?
That's another, yeah, that is definitely one of the reasons.
Yeah, it's another consideration so that we can have a minimum set that goes through all the IP review and Eclipse and then expand from there.
Speaking of that, did we bring up the licensing issues that there is with the current VOLTTRON Central code? I don't know that we have brought that up in one of these. You might have last time.
In case I didn't, so the VOLTTRON Central UI uses JQ widgets, which has a free for non-commercial use. So if you want to use that as is, then you'll need to license it. But otherwise, it serves as a proof of concept of how to build a UI in VOLTTRON, and the services underlying that can be built upon to do the UI work that you want to do. So just FYI. All right. Any questions on that or anything else?
Andrew, we just noticed a new issue that you created regarding forwarder. Can you expand or explain about that?
Oh, you muted.
Andrew, you're muted.
There we go. I don't know a lot about it yet, but it is an issue I've witnessed in the past and we've talked about and never been able to really isolate. And what I do know about it is it goes away when you restart either the platform or the forwarder. What I hadn't observed, which appears to be happening, and this is all in DC's deployment. So it's Matt Dermond, who I thought might be on the call today. But he sent that to me, and I just wanted to get it put as an issue so that we can have a conversation around it. But it's something I've personally witnessed in my deployments as well, but it's always been sort of intermittent and weird. The behavior he's talking about that I had not noticed is that it is occasionally flushing the data and catching everything up and then going, I don't know if it leaves or stays in the bad state while it does that, but it then goes back to caching and not having a successful connection. I think this may be an interplay. There's an existing open issue about the forward historian not having back off when it loses connectivity. And it could be that, and it could be running out of sockets, which is a problem we had seen in the past with some of the ZMQ deployments, is that there was
I'm sure you're probably right with that. That is, we've seen this on the campus kind of as well. I mean, it's been a while since we've seen it, but
yeah, me too. So I don't know if it's been resolved in later versions. I think he's running 6.x, and I don't know exactly which revision of 6.x, but he'll need to confirm that. I was going to try to mention him and get, but I couldn't find him, so I'll try to ping him to engage.
Craig, could this be related to the lab homes issue? No, that's not with the forwarder though.
Not well. It is and it isn't with the forwarder. The forwarder, the one on the lab home seems to be the. It's different because does this one actually lose data or does this go into cache directly?
I don't think it's
until,
I don't think it's losing data. It's just falling very far behind for a particular site and then catching up and then falling behind again, which is the behavior. Like every time I've observed this behavior, I've only let it fall behind a little bit and then I've caught it, reset the agent, and everything works fine. And it's always been like, I don't have the option to just sit there and let it run because I need to get the data flowing.
Right.
So this is behavior I haven't directly witnessed, but I think it's just because I haven't left it bad for a week, which is what has happened here.
Okay.
Craig, I think this is the same behavior with lab homes.
Yeah, that's exactly the same behavior with lab homes. and they're running close to develop, if I remember. So
Yeah, I would love to find a solution for it because it is, and we continue to find a lot of value in the forward historian over the data mover because of being able to use multiple historians on the target platform. So
Okay.
yep.
All right. So we're working this for the lab home. So now,
now there would be like somewhere between data mover and forward historian is probably really the optimal solution, which is probably just a small feature add to the forward historian that I should just implement and put a PR in for, but would be to like check for a list of identities on the target platform before sending data. But
I believe that that's actually already there.
is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Is it a list or just one? Is it like the? Is it like
I believe it's
capabilities that it's like?
No,
you can either have a wild card or one thing.
This one I believe I implemented as a list because we needed to have multiple historians on the target, just like what you were talking about.
Okay.
So yeah, that's already there.
Okay. Related to that other issue with the capabilities, is there a way to specify the capabilities when you install the agent, or do you always have to go back and like modify the default?
I believe you have to modify the default.
Okay.
You can specify the capability actually in the agent through an RPC expose, but to actually add permissions, you specify the capabilities through the auth mechanism.
And then can you walk, do you have it in your head enough of like, what I'm doing is I've got an agent that needs to manage the driver config store, right? And I know VCTL already does, or not VCTL, VOLTTRON Central already does that. How, that's a different mechanism because I've never had to go.
VOLTTRON Central doesn't actually do that. That's part of the web. And there's one capability that allows it, that is only web that uses it. And you look at that one, that would have it.
Only web.
Yeah. The platform.web.
Okay, how does that cross platforms though? Like VC is running on one system and it's able to make an it doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
Okay,
it's
so
not cross platform.
It's just
it
that
is, yeah,
the
it's
VC
just,
is making a call to the web on the remote platform. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That sounds like it's something like baked in that should probably be more explicit, right?
At least documented. How's that?
we can agree on that, I think.
You want to make this a topic for the next one, next office hours, that you can demo?
Well, it sounds like there's an 8.0 like update, so maybe if you walk through the new 8.0 flow, that would be handy for some of us.
This would be the part of the RPC
like
stuff that Spencer's been working on.
Can you explain this a little bit, Craig? It feels as though only you and Andrew understood the conversation.
That's only because
what's happening
is Slack
is
conversation.
Yeah, sorry. So I'm writing an agent that is managing the configuration for the platform driver through a variety of other mechanisms. So it needs access to the platform driver configuration store. So it needs to be able to call the configuration store via an RPC call with the platform driver's identity as its target. That by default is denied, and that's controlled in your auth.json file, where your capabilities tell you which identities you're allowed to access the config store for. And generally, by default, when you install an agent, that is just your identity when you start the agent. There's issues with adding things to that in the config in the auth command. It doesn't really. There's no documentation about how to do it, and I just don't think it's structured in a way that it'll actually work. So I think that probably needs to be refactored, where it would take a list of identities or a list of Yeah, the like comma separated list for the capabilities does not work when you have the kind of capability like the set config store capability, because that, or I forget what it's actually called. Hang on, I've got it up right here.
Edit config store.
Yeah, edit config store. When you put in a JSON object with identity and a target, and you do the comma separated list, it interprets the whole thing as a string and just breaks. So that something needs to be refactored there. And I think the problem right now is the data structure is wrong, because if you have edit config store, you can only have one edit. It's a dictionary. You can only have one edit config store key, and identity is not a list. It's a single entity. So it needs to probably be a list of identities that you can pass in to the edit config store.
Rather than
I-
just a
Can I
star.
interrupt? Just
Mhm.
yeah, I think the identity can be a pattern. So if
Yeah,
you
but-
give like a
but-
you give like a slash star whatever, right? No.
Yeah, but you don't want it like
Identity.
that. Doesn't need to be the two options, is one or everything that matches a pattern. It needs to be one,
the
two
pattern
specific
can
ones.
the pattern can be something A pipe B pipe C.
Okay.
So the pattern can be that. Though there is two things that needed, like that can become part of 8.01. There can be better documentation for it. Right now, this feature is not documented properly. And second, I think the current version, that like the 7x, has a discrepancy between like how the format of the string that should be given if you do a VCTL auth add versus VCTL auth update is different. So if you do
I didn't
for
even try
VCTL,
I didn't try to remove it and add a new one. I just was using the update.
so if you do a VCTL auth add, you can provide like a JSON dump of a dictionary. And
well, I
that
was
would
able
work.
to get that to work for one entry with the update as well.
Okay. Yeah,
Just
but
not
if you have,
you have to unquote it. You have to remove the like literal quotes and just
yeah,
pass
yeah.
it.
If you do a add, and if you do VCTL auth add -- capability, then it goes within a quote. It's a string. But if you do a VCTL update, and where you're doing one at a time, right? Like when it's prompting for stuff, then it need not be within quotes. So there is format mismatch. It's not uniform, and that's not documented. So it definitely can require more like format updates. And
is the pattern just like Python regular expressions
yeah,
pattern?
it's a Python regular expression.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be good to know too.
Yeah, so you can definitely have identity, within like slash, and then you can have like A pipe B pipe C, and it'll interpret it as a pattern. It's a Python regular expression.
Yeah, I still kind of wonder, like from a performance perspective, whether it wouldn't be better to have both options. Like you could pass in a pattern if you wanted to, or a list that turned into keys that would be hash lookups instead of regex. But
Yeah, I also agree with Andrew, because regex will be a problem for many users.
well, right. Plus, just like if you're talking about like from a
The
like
reason
the bigger problem is if you're generating this, like if you're automatically deploying things, you've got to like take a list of things you want to give something permissions to and turn that into a regex expression instead of just passing in the data structure.
I think the reason it's currently at least a regex is that though currently only the edit config store is the only capability that is using this parameter, it's implemented as a generic functionality. So you can add now that in 8.0 you can add RPC restrictions to any existing agent, right? The developer need not put in as a feature when they're coding it. So you can dynamically add it. And so when you add it, you can dynamically say, okay, for this function, for parameter X, it can only be A or B or C can be the only valid values that can be passed. And it need not be A or B or C, right? It could be like, oh, the topic name can only start with devices / star, right? It can only access building one's equipment. So a regular expression gives the flexibility to apply to all these scenarios instead of just this one particular scenario where the identity is a clear list. Right? So I'm just thinking aloud for examples, right? So if I want to restrict,
the problem with on the identity, the reason why the explicit list makes sense to me is like you don't know like some that if you're using a pattern and like yeah here you could just pipe them together and have exact tokens, but let's be honest, like people are probably going to just write a permissive pattern. Then any identity you like, someone can nefariously add an identity that matches an existing pattern, even like without you, like you know what I mean, like without explicitly allowing it. That I don't. Yeah, I would. Yeah, that would be my sort of. I hear you, and I mean I hear that it's generic function, and I think it makes sense. Although I worry about maybe if that happens every time or if that's optional, the performance implications of like checking every RPC call against a regex.
No, it's not every RPC call, right? Only for which you have
You have
explicitly
okay.
defined a capability and an RPC restriction, RPC allow restriction. So if you say, okay, okay, at least the example that I had in mind when I put that in place is that, okay, I have a historian query method and I have like all kinds of data in my historian, but I want certain agents to be able to query only certain topics. And I don't want them to query everything that's there in my store. In that case, I would add a capability on the allow method dynamically and say, these agents can only access the query method with topic name of pattern, campus1/building1/device1/star, and nothing else, right?
Yeah,
so that way
makes
I
sense.
protect the rest of the topics. So that was one example that was that I had in mind, but I can see your point too, that where.
Well, let's make an issue for this to capture it, and then.
Well, I think the documentation is going to go a long way, right? Like.
Yeah, that is definitely something to start with. I completely agree on that, though I do not know what would be a good solution to make it easier for scenarios such as this specific identity case where it's a list.
Yeah, I mean, you could just have two different parameters for the edit config capability. One is a pattern,
maybe have
one is a
one
list.
that's a regex and one that's an identity.
You use one or the other, and it's like you don't use both, maybe, or maybe you could say both, but only check the regex if it's defined.
Let's just have a combinatorial pi test for that. Yeah. Like we don't have enough problems with pi tests.
Okay. Well, and yeah, so this is all great feedback because it's this kind of actual use cases that we need to understand.
Well, I think one of the things that's kind of been interesting for me digging into this was just like uncovering where internal functionalities use like secret sauce versus the public, like the APIs that are actually available to everyone else, and trying to minimize those ideally so that everything is documented uniformly. It's kind of what I was thinking about. Because like I was thinking about like, I know VC can do this. I don't know how it does it. And it's clearly not through just an RPC call, because I've never had to add these extra capabilities for VC.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, and it's those kind of, yeah. If you find more of those, like, hey, is this something, A, documented, or B, make it, let people know how that's being used if they want to use it themselves for certain cases. Good stuff.
Because I mean, I think it's the same thing like the backnet reader problems I was finding. The same kind of thing, which just goes back to like all the code in that's like agent dependent that's in the platform that gets really convoluted.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you like that, Craig, where there's like been a typo misidentifying multi-states like since the beginning of time? No one had caught.
What can I say?
I looked at it. I was like, surely that's just like I did that. Like I tapped a Vim shortcut or something, and then I went and looked and I was like, nope, it's been there. That's
no one's needed those or something.
All right, I think that's a good place to end. What do you think, Jeremy?
Sure. All right. Well, thanks a lot, everybody, and thanks, Andrew.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And we'll keep it going.
Hopefully my pain can be someone else's gain here.
Yeah, well, and if there, and we appreciate you sharing your pain, because yeah, if there's a way that we can decrease your pain, we want to do that too.
I mean, it's just, I mean, I think it's great. Yeah, this is fine. I mean, I'm just, it's stuff I hadn't tried to do before, and it's how it is.
Yeah,
Obviously, not a lot of other people are trying to do it either.
we're on the bleeding edge, and that's always a great place to be, right?
Maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks everybody.
Thanks. See ya.
Yep. Bye.